This is the Ferrari SF1000 Formula Sim Racing Steering Wheel add-on, and I have to say, as a bit of a Formula 1 nerd, this is easily one of the coolest looking steering wheels I've had the pleasure of racing with. In this review, I'm going to take a detailed look at this Thrustmaster steering wheel and put it through its paces on track to see if it's worth picking up. Now before I go any further, I do want to say this steering wheel was sent to me by Thrustmaster, but this doesn't impact anything I'm about to say in this review. Now the Ferrari SF1000 add-on steering wheel fits perfectly into a mid-range price point for sim racing wheels. It costs £350 in the UK, €400 in Europe and $400 in the States. That's a pretty reasonable price considering what you're getting, and you can quite often find it priced lower at some retailers as well. However, this relatively low price point for a sim racing wheel with such a large display and all the bells and whistles that this SF1000 wheel has does mean that some areas of the wheel suffer a little bit in terms of quality. During my time with this wheel, I've been comparing it to other wheels I've used within this price point. That's the likes of the Fanatec Formula V 2.5 and the Acertec La Prima Formula wheel, to name a couple. So let's start this review properly by looking at the overall design of this wheel. Like I said right at the beginning, my first impressions of this wheel blew me away. It's a true one-to-one replica of the steering wheel used by Sebastian Vettel during the 2020 season. And it's not a million miles away from the steering wheel that Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc are using today. That alone is pretty cool, and for many Formula 1 fans, this wheel is more than high quality enough to be purchased just to sit on a shelf or in a display cabinet. When you start to get up close and handle the steering wheel, some things start to stand out, which does detract a little bit from its overall quality. Some choices of material, the sticker quality, the hand grips, just to name a few. And I'll jump into all of these in more detail in a minute. But first, let's break down what we've got here. This one-to-one replica comes in at 280mm across and features a huge number of inputs. In fact, every toggle, button and encoder on the wheel can be used while sim racing, which is awesome. Some control the screen directly, while others can be mapped in-game. The front of the wheel features a real 3mm thick piece of carbon fibre which looks stunning, and at the top of the faceplate are a range of rev lights as well as two sets of flag lights. Again, all of these work just like they do in a real-world F1 car. Then there is that screen. This huge 4.3-inch display is again the same size as the screen that is found on the real-world wheel and can be set up to look just the same. The display can show a range of live information while racing, and you can change what is shown at any time. The hand grips are constructed from rubber, and around the back you have a set of magnetic brushed aluminium shifters and dual clutch paddles, as well as the rather plasticky Thrustmaster quick release. Okay, so let's touch on the positives and what I really love about this wheel's design. Of course, the overall look of this wheel is excellent, and some material choices throughout are really lovely. The carbon fibre faceplate is a nice addition, adding a bit of realism and quality to the overall design. Having metal paddle shifters on a rocker feels great every time you pull a shift, although they do feel ever so slightly clunky with a relatively loud click. These shifters can be activated as both push and pull paddles, meaning you can change gear one-handed if you do really want to show off. There are also a set of upgradable paddle shifters which I'm told feel slightly less clunky during use, although I haven't got them on this wheel, so unfortunately I can't comment. But these shifters are perfectly usable out of the box. Also, I feel that the engagement of the rotary encoders and thumb encoders feels great. As you rotate them, they have just the right amount of resistance, meaning you can make incredibly quick changes on the fly with the confidence that you've made the right change and haven't gone too far or made too little of an adjustment. Finally, I do want to mention that screen, as it really is excellent. The image clarity is crystal clear, and you get a few options to customize. You can change some settings on the wheel itself, which allow you to switch your measurements and set up your in-game telemetry for games such as F1 23. When you're in-game, you can choose between a range of different screen layouts, which is all controlled with the encoders on the centre of the wheel. Also, there is a really nice metal toggle switch at the bottom of the wheel, which is incredibly tactile, and this actually allows you to turn off your display if you wanted to for whatever reason. I've been told that the display does work on all consoles including Xbox and PS5, but I've only tested it with a PC, and it really is a bit of a game changer if you do like to race F1 23. You can show all your in-game MFD displays on the screen, including your tyre temperatures, your wear level, damage and more. These can be changed mid-race using the encoder next to the Ferrari logo, and it feels really great to use this to interact with your car rather than having to scroll through an on-screen HUD. If you're racing with a different game outside of the F1 series, there are also a few preset displays built in which, again, they can be scrolled through mid-race, and this works flawlessly in both Assetto Corsa Competizione and iRacing. Now, I do want to point out a few things that I'm not so keen on, and some of these are just usual Thrustmaster quirks which can be commonplace on a lot of Thrustmaster wheels. When you look past the carbon fibre faceplate, which is really nice, some other materials do feel a little on the cheap side. The entire body of this wheel, other than the faceplate, is constructed from plastic, and this won't really affect you when you're driving, but when you're interacting with the wheel outside of a sim, it always niggles me a little bit. The quick release itself is the classic Thrustmaster QR, however, you'll need the updated Thrustmaster QR adapter if you plan on using this wheel with the T818 wheelbase like I've got here. The QR is an all plastic construction and is quite honestly nowhere near the same quality as quick releases from other brands. Although the new approach used by the T818 wheelbase is much better than past solutions, so Thrustmaster are moving in the right direction. Another area which could have been improved is the button quality. At this price point, I'm okay with the buttons and encoders being constructed from plastic, however engaging each button isn't really the most positive experience. They're pretty heavy to engage in, there's a fair bit of movement before they actually click. I compare them most similarly to buttons found on my Fanatec McLaren GT3 V2 wheel, and that's a sub £200 wheel. The push buttons on most Moser wheels and on the Acertec La Prima, which are kind of in the same price range, feel considerably nicer. Also, it's a very minor point, but the sticker placement is very inconsistent. Some button stickers are really quite wonky, so I think a little more quality control in this department would be beneficial. Finally, one more area that could have been improved a bit are the hand grips. These grips are constructed from rubber and have almost no give to them. They're really rock solid, but they do have a nice texture. They're not the same sticky rubber that's found on that Fanatec McLaren GT3 V2 wheel, which is nice because I really don't like that. But they're also not the same quality of silicone that they're used on wheels from Acertec. There's quite a prominent seam that runs down both hand grips, which is very noticeable if you're racing without gloves on. But if, like me, you race with gloves on, you'll have no complaints with these grips at all. Outside of the build quality itself, there is one huge area where Thrustmaster are lagging behind their competitors, and that's with their software. Updating the drivers and firmware on this wheel is easily one of the most painful processes I've come across in sim racing. To update the firmware, you actually have to take apart the steering wheel, removing the shifters at the rear to physically connect the wheel to your PC via a USB cable. Then you have to go through a manual firmware update before having to reassemble your wheel and attach it to your wheelbase. If you're racing one of the F1 games on a console, it doesn't stop there. To get the display working correctly, you have to go through an additional process to connect your wheel by Wi-Fi and set up the UDP telemetry. Honestly, it took me around an hour, if not a bit longer, just to find all the correct documentation on Thrustmaster's website and actually get both my SF1000 and T818 wheels up and running. Now, I really hope this is addressed moving forward, and Thrustmaster simply release a better solution like almost every other sim racing manufacturer has. Setting up any sim racing product should not be this convoluted. But really, this is a one-time thing. Once you're past that initial setup, got your drivers, your firmware updated, you can forget about this process altogether and just enjoy sim racing. Overall, this SF1000 sim racing steering wheel is a relatively mixed bag that leans further into positive than negative. There's no getting away from the fact that this thing looks stunning, and out of all my steering wheels, this is the one that I show off most to my friends. Just having that official Ferrari branding and looking like it's been ripped right out of a real-world F1 car is awesome. Also, the functionality that you get at this price point is really unmatched. I challenge you to show me another sub £400 or $400 steering wheel with just this much interactivity and a screen like this. You really have to stretch into the £600, £700 or dollar range to find a wheel that is comparable. However, there are places where this does feel a little bit like a lower cost wheel. But if you can look past these imperfections, or if you race with gloves on, then this wheel is an F1 or a Ferrari fan's dream come true. The really competitive price point, the impressive functionality, the Ferrari branding and the cool factor really make this wheel something that I'd highly recommend if you already own a Thrustmaster wheelbase.